Hey everybody, my name is Jake DeVoss and this is my differentiated planning, instruction, and assessment project. So first here is the original lesson plan. These are just my standards. We're basically going to go over plate tectonics and different geological features, landforms, earth materials, and geological hazards. More of the features and landforms. Construct an explanation based on evidence that describes the mechanisms causing plate tectonics motion. And B, develop and use models for the different types of plate tectonics settings, convergent, divergent, and transform boundaries. So the original lesson plan, students had to plot out earthquake data points on a map and draw conclusions through class discussion, group discussion, and a writing assessment. This is the map, and those are the data points. So there's take each one of those data points, longitude and latitude, and plot out where the earthquake occurred and the magnitude that happened there. And there, through that you would find possibly the Ring of Fire, which is volcanoes, but also has a lot of earthquakes there as well. It's not a huge point, but you would find that all the earthquakes would occur along convergent boundaries. After they would do the writing assessment prompt, which would go like this: please explain why and where earthquakes happen using notes and information gained through class discussion to explain your answers. 4 to 5 sentences required. So a pretty simple assessment for the original lesson plan. And here's an overview of my modifications. So I took that original one. There was no real pre-assessment for the original lesson plan, so I include here a Kahoot pre-assessment. They are allowed to choose a 10 by 10 area of interest. So on the map, I'm going to go back up to the map here. On the map, they chose 10 by 10 areas, so 10 by 10 blocks. And whatever they're most interested in. So 10 by 10 area of interest, questions about the point of interest. I would ask them questions about their point of interest. I also scaffolded and differentiated, including for all levels of learning. So if they needed to be challenged more, if this was perhaps too challenging for them, it would be, I would provide more assistance there. And then at the very end, I did the same Kahoot as I did in the pre-assessment. I do for the post-assessment, which would allow me to see student learning progress and give the students immediate feedback on their own learning. So the Kahoot pre-assessment, so I'm going to go through each one of these modifications, each one of these bullet points. You're going to see them underlined here as well. So here's the Kahoot pre-assessment. There's just 10 Kahoot questions. If you're not familiar with Kahoot, it's an online program. Students will sign in on their phone, or if they can't get it on their phone, they can at least look onto a neighbor's phone, which my students had phones, so they were able to do this. But it's just a set of 10 Kahoot questions. They plug it in on their phone, and then it gives them feedback on the board as to what was the right answer. So then students would be grouped depending on their answered questions. If they got a 7 or above, they weren't put in groups per se, but they were allowed to do a certain assignment. So they were differentiated based on their performance, on their prior knowledge. And then B, if they got a 6 or below, you have a different one. We're going to have explanations on both 7 or above or 6 below on the next slides here. In addition, ELLs were provided a more scaffolded assignment with the same content, just more direction. So they're going to learn the same information as Jennifer Himmel states, that it's important to not equate limited language proficiency with limited cognitive ability. That even though I am scaffolding this for the ELLs, as we're going to see here in a little bit, they're going to have a different assignment based on their proficiency, their language proficiency. But I'm not giving them any different information. That's going to be the same information. They're going to be doing basically the same assignment, just a more scaffolded one for their proficiency level. So if they scored a 7 or above on the pre-assessment, these students were given the opportunity to replace 2 of the earthquakes with any earthquake of their interest, so they can go online and find any earthquake of their interest if they got a 7 or above. So here, this makes it a little more challenging for them. They would have to research and find a new earthquake that they can replace with one of the given earthquakes. And then if they received a 6 or below on the Kahoot pre-assessment, these students were given the opportunity to collect additional aids in completing the assignment. We're going to see those aids in a little bit. But just to go over the actual assignment and the real meat of the assignment here, they were allowed to choose a 10 by 10 area of interest. So that same map that we saw before, they chose 10 by 10 area, and then they would answer a set of questions about that area. They would need to highlight vocabulary terms such as the tectonic plates that were there, boundaries that were there, and the direction of the plate movement that was in that 10 by 10 area. It must include at least one boundary, was really the only rule that I gave them. They couldn't choose the 10 by 10 area that was just in the ocean where there was no plate boundaries, even though there is some in the ocean, but that's besides the point. So these are the questions that I provided for this. For either the above 7 or below 6, they still have the same questions. Why did this 10 by 10 area interest you? What kind of boundary or boundaries is/are in your area? And explain the amount of earthquakes. What depth of earthquake can be expected in your area? When was the last significant earthquake in that area? What kind of landforms can be expected there? Think about the kind of boundaries. Scaffolding and differentiation included for all levels of learning. This is one of the main modifications. Here again, we see the 7 or above students are challenged to look up more information. The 6 or below students are given more aids to accomplish the same goal and obtain the same information. We're going to see the aids here in just a second. And then the lower proficiency ELL students are given an appropriate assignment that accomplishes the same goal and allows students to obtain the same information. Again, just harping on Jennifer Himmel and that awesome revelation. So here's some informational aids for students, and this is available for all students. However, it was highly encouraged that students who scored a 6 or below, that they would pick up these aids. So it shows them what latitude and longitude is and how they work, and it also gives them examples of the magnitudes and whether or not those are high or low, and the annual averages of how often those happen, and just some additional information that might help them with this. And then here are examples of plotted points to help them plot these points as well. And here we have a map that shows the direction of the plate boundaries. This is going to be helpful for all the students. All students were encouraged to pick this one up, unless they wanted to research on their own and just find out what was happening. So this is the main ELL assignment that was handed out. They still had to plot those points. However, if you'll see in number 5 here, in number 2, it says pick any 5 by 5 area on the map that you are interested in and highlight it. So they, instead of doing a 10 by 10, they did a 5 by 5. I gave them a color code, a color key on how to label the boundaries that are in that 5 by 5 area. I gave them an example on plotting a data point here, being a 6.8 magnitude. And then just a few follow-up questions. Why did they pick that area? Did that amount of earthquakes surprise you? In parentheses, I have an amount with a number sign because I want them to talk about the number of earthquakes. And did the magnitude, in parentheses, of size of the earthquake surprise you? And then what kind of boundary did your area have? So this is really for the low proficiency ELL students. And then I did a Kahoot post-assessment. It's the same Kahoot that was done before, but this will just give them immediate feedback as well as myself. So for the Kahoot pre-assessment and post-assessment, I learned in Lee and Buxton's Diversity and Equity in Science Education Research Policy and Practice how important it is to have common assessments as it allows the teacher to assess where the student is at and for the student to recognize their own progress and where they may need to ask questions. And in the for the rationale for the 10 by 10 area of interest, I learned from Joyce Nutta in Teaching Science to English Language Learners how important it is to bring in the cultures of students when possible. So they were allowed to choose any 10 by 10 area on the map that maybe they were culturally interested in because of their prior knowledge, or maybe a place that they wanted to visit one day, or they're interested in. It's always great to rely on that prior knowledge. And that goes right along with the questions about the point of interest, just letting them further talk about where they're interested and why they're interested in this topic, which would hopefully link that prior knowledge to what they're learning currently in the class. And then throughout the course, scaffolding and differentiation, including for all levels of learning, not just scaffolding and differentiating for ELLs and non-ELLs, but for students who want to be challenged and students who are maybe struggling with the material, providing differentiation for them as well. And then the Kahoot post-assessment, which we've already talked about here. Okay, the annotated bibliography. So here we have Nutta and Bautista and Butler, Teaching Science to English Language Learners, understanding where the ELL students is coming from and facing now is imperative to understand for the teacher. This book gave strategies for teaching and understanding the ELL. I particularly enjoyed reading the 5 principles for creating effective second language learning environments, as I've used them to influence this differentiated assignment. Yeah, it's very, very important to provide an effective environment for anyone learning their second language, and understanding where they're at and where they're coming from. I learned a lot from that. And then looking at Lee and Buxton's Diversity and Equity in Science Education, this book gave me insight concerning assessment of ELLs in science, as well as how science reasoning skills are acquired by ELLs and non-ELLs alike. Just relying on that prior knowledge again and trying to build on top of that. And then obviously Zweier's Building Academic Language. I hope I'm saying his name right. Meeting common core standards across disciplines. He made it very clear that academic language is different for each content area, and that it's important to keep this and other uses of similar terms in mind when introducing new academic language to my students. Especially in science, there's so much academic language that might cross between the science class and other academic classes, that it's very important to have those academic language, those terms laid out and how you want them to be able to use those terms. Then Shanahan and Shanahan, Teaching Disciplinary Literacy to Adolescents. They proposed a varying level of literacy pyramid that is essential to creating any assessment or assignment. I use their pyramid to better understand the varying levels of literacy and what is realistic to expect from my ELLs. And that is all. So thank you very much. Please let me know if I need to include anything else. I know I need to add in the example of my students, which I will as soon as I get the chance to put that in. But anything else besides that, I would greatly appreciate. Thank you.